welcome to the Mornington Peninsula Regional Gallery Creativity Online. My name's Jill, I'm the Education Officer here, and today I'd like to talk to you about this work here by Danie Mellor. He's an indigenous artist from northern Queensland, and he's done this work in pencils and pastels and watercolours. I'm going to give you a moment now. You might like to press pause in just a minute and have a really good look at all the details, and then we'll talk a bit about the things we can see. This work is called An Unsettled Vision, The Predicament. He made it during 2007 and 2008, and it won the National Works on Paper Award in 2008. I bet you notice lots of things. The beautiful koalas, for starters. You might have noticed there's other native animals in here too. Here is another koala here. There is a kookaburra here. Here are some wallabies and kangaroos that are in this castle, which is unusual, isn't it? The castle is an unusual building. It doesn't look like it's an early Australian building at all, does it? It looks like it's something from maybe a European or an English fairy tale or something. And over here we have a tree kangaroo. Did you know that there are kangaroos who live in trees? Even though they bounce around, they bounce along the branches of the trees. They live in the rainforests in northern Queensland, where Danie Mellor comes from. And in a rainforest, the trees are so tall, they grow up so fast to reach the sun, that there's hardly any light that gets down to the forest floor, and not many plants grow down on the forest floor. And so over many, many, many thousands of years, the kangaroos have evolved to be able to bounce around and travel along the branches in the rainforest. So this tree kangaroo actually does belong in a tree. But otherwise, don't you notice the animals are very much out of place, aren't they? If you and I were this koala living here, I don't think we'd be very happy, would we? Koalas only eat eucalyptus leaves. And these trees certainly are not Australian eucalyptus trees, are they? I'm not even sure if they're real trees or not. They certainly don't look like the sorts of things you find in an Australian forest. You might be wondering why it is that Danie Mellor has painted and drawn the animals in their natural colours, but everything in the background is all in this one red colour. It's certainly, having them against this red background certainly makes them stand out. And you might have seen patterns like this and designs like this in old-fashioned china plates. Looks a bit like this. You might have seen that before. And did you notice, when we were looking up closely, did you notice all the sparkly crystals that are all over this work? I imagine that you're starting to have a few questions and a few things that are making you think and wonder when you're looking at this artwork here. So in a minute you might like to pause and talk to the people that you're with about what sort of questions you have. What is it that this artwork is making you wonder? Why do you think Danie Mellor has made this work? And what do you think he might be wanting us to be thinking about? I would have loved to have heard what the ideas were that you were sharing just then. I hope we get to share ideas another time soon in the future. Do you think that Danie Mellor is asking us to think about where it is that Australian animals like to live? And do they really belong in a landscape like this? Maybe he's saying that castles and sparkly things might all look very pretty and lovely for some of us humans, but they're really not a special place for a koala to live. They don't need the castles, they don't need bridges, even though they can swim across rivers as well as being really good climbers. Koalas are very good swimmers, actually. So they don't need any of these man-made, human-made things in this painting. About the way that this artwork looks a bit like old-fashioned dinnerware. Danie Mellor has said that he thinks that some non-Indigenous people look but don't see the Australian landscape. And certainly in the first groups of non-Indigenous people to come to Australia saw it as a very alien place, and they tried to change the land to look more like what they were used to. And in the history of the last 200 years in Australia, this is often referred to as a time when Australia was settled. But I think that by calling this an unsettled vision, Danie Mellor is drawing our attention to the fact that mistakes were made. And he's asking us to think about how we see the Australian bush and to think about how we see it and love its beauty. In the title, he also calls it a predicament, which means a problem, and there have been problems. But I think he wants us to think now about how maybe you and me, we can join Danie Mellor, and we can be part of the solution with a better vision for the future. Koalas only live in one place in the whole world. That's down the side coast of Australia, down the east coast of Australia. For 60,000 years, which is a very, very long time, when only Aboriginal people lived here in Australia, there were lots of forests and woodlands and beautiful places for koalas and other animals to live. But in the last 200 years, which is not very long compared to 60,000 years, in the last 200, since non-Aboriginal people have also come to live in Australia, lots of the forests have been chopped down to make way for cities and streets and for cars and for houses and for farms, and there's been lots of out-of-control bushfires. And as a result, lots of the bushland that the koalas live in has been destroyed, and there's not a lot left for them to live in. So that's what this workshop is going to be about. This is going to be about you and me joining with Danie Mellor and creating a better future, a world where there's lots of forests and beautiful places for koalas and other animals to live in, where they can be happy, healthy and safe. Okay, so let's have some fun now making a habitat for our koala where it's going to be happy to live. We'll make some beautiful bushland for it. We will need some paper to work on. You'll need a glue stick, you'll need scissors, a pencil, you'll need some textas, and you'll need some magazines. Whatever magazines you've got, we're just looking for the bits of coloured paper in them. This is the sort of thing we're looking for. You'll need to find some browns, we'll need to find some greens like this that we can cut and tear out. Or I'm going to be showing you a number of different ways we can do this artwork. So if you're lucky enough to have some patterned paper, you might like to work with some patterned paper. And you might have some plain paper as well. So you can use all of those things or any one. I'm going to show you a number of different ideas, and you can do one idea or you can mix up all the ideas together. Okay, so for this first one here, we're going to use some torn paper. Tear some pages out of your magazine that have got green in them until you've got lots and lots of green shapes, all different sorts of greens. Once you've collected enough greens, get your glue stick and put lots of glue all over your page and start to stick my paper on all my green patches. The name koala means no water or no drink in Darug, which is the language of one of the many groups of Aboriginal people living on the east coast of Australia. They gave koalas this name because koalas get most of their water from the leaves they eat. They only need to come down out of the trees to look for water when the weather is very hot. So there's all my bits of green all stuck down, all representing the eucalypts that the koala likes to eat. So now I'm going to be making a tree trunk for my koala. I'm still tearing the paper. Because this is quite dark, my greens are really quite dark here, I'm going to have a torn strip of white paper that I'll use for the tree trunk here. So now we need to make our koala, don't we? First of all, you need to draw yourself an oval shape like this. This is for its tummy. Next you need to draw another oval shape like this for its head. It's all made of ovals and circles pretty much. Here's another oval here for its ear. Here's another oval here for its ear. Koalas have a big nose. And it has little eyes. For its leg, they have a big back leg because they need to have strong legs to hang on to those trees, and a little short leg attached to this big bit here, and they have big claws. because they need to be able to hang on to those trees. So there's one, and here's their front arm here, also with some big claws. So, with your black texta, you can outline your koala that you've drawn. And there's our koala. So you need to cut that out. But I think I'll also, just like the example I've done here, I might put lots of little marks here to look like it's fur. There's our koala, very happily sitting in its new home. This next idea I'm going to show you, we're going to use cut paper, and we're going to use scissors this time rather than tearing it out. And you just need to cut yourself a whole lot of random shapes. Usually tree shapes are a bit rounded. So if you've got some different coloured greens, cut yourself some different shapes like this. Lots of glue down and start sticking them. I'm working with generally lighter colours up the top, and I'm going to make them go darker as I come down. But you can do it however you like.
The koala has such a big nose, so it can easily smell and find the sweetest and juiciest leaves to eat. In those cute chubby cheeks are special pouches where they can store leaves to munch on for later. And they are very good climbers because they have big claws and they have 2 thumbs on each paw.
I'm also going to put a few strips of light grey here to look a little bit like tree trunks, to look as though there's trees a long way away in the distance. So now we need to make ourselves a trunk. So I've cut my bits of paper out of magazines, and I just found bits of brown. I think it was a picture of an old shed I used. It wasn't quite big enough, so I had to make three strips. So that's my trunk. Now this time for my koala, I drew it on grey paper and have cut it out. So I'm going to be sticking it on here. You might be lucky enough to have this is a Posca pen. It's a paint pen. And if you have one of them, that could be fun to be putting some little marks on to look like fur over the top of the dark grey. And there's our koala happily sitting in its bushland where it belongs. And for this third idea I'm going to share with you, we're going to be cutting out some shapes that look just a little bit like leaves and making a more designed kind of sort of pattern of leaves, of a habitat for our koala to live in. So if you've got coloured paper, or you can, once again, you could use the paper from magazines, the bits that you've cut out that have got the right colours in them. What I did is I piled my bits of paper all up, and I cut them into sort of shapes like this, like leaves, all at once. It was just quicker and easier than cutting them all individually. So cut yourself some shapes that look like leaves. That one doesn't look much like a leaf, so I'll change that a bit. Once again, cover your top half of your page with lots of glue and start arranging your leaves in a way that looks good for you. They can be touching, they can have gaps between them, whatever seems right.
If you're lucky enough to see a koala in the bush, it's likely to be sleeping. Koalas sleep a lot because eucalypt leaves are so very low in nutrients that the koalas don't have much energy. Every day a koala has to eat up to 1 kilogram of leaves to get the nutrients it needs. That's a lot of leaf eating.
So that's one way you can arrange your leaf shapes. In this one I had much more overlapping, and you can see I also mixed in some plain paper with my patterned paper. You can do that too. This one happens to be all with patterned paper. This time I've got a dark grey piece of paper that I've cut out that's going to be my trunk. And here's my koala. This time I've cut it out of light grey paper. And that might be enough. I might just leave it really simple. So, you have fun making yourself a beautiful new habitat for your koala to live, with all beautiful eucalypt leaves for it to eat, nice safe tree for it to sit in. And you can choose which technique you'd like to use, or mix them all up. You can have patterned paper, plain paper, you can tear it or cut it, have some shapes in leaf shapes, some looking like tree trunks. Just have a lovely time making a new habitat for your koala.